Hi again then guys, and so we are finally here, the matchup within the Rival series that so many people were asking for since the day the 1.19 patch dropped. Of course you wanted to see this rivalry, the three new Group C monsters going head to head, Jaguar, Nissan and Mercedes. You want to know which one to spend your cash on if you don't want to buy all three, or you just want to know for the fun of it which one could turn out to be the quickest, or which one could turn out to have the best maybe just numbers in a top trump style mashup. Well, let's find out. First of all, we're going to break down all three cars on their own, consider some good points, perhaps some not so good points in some cases, then we'll compare all of their specs to find out in conjunction with the lap times which one comes out on top. So kicking us off first of all is the Nissan R92CP. Now we're starting strong because I said already in its review, and I believe I touched on it in the tune setup that I did for the car as well, and incidentally stick around on the channel because I'm doing two more tune setups tomorrow for both the Mercedes and the Jaguar to round out all three. But when I said in the videos about this Nissan regarding its all-round ability, it's starting strong. I said that it was the best of the three cars as far as I was concerned, and although, perhaps surprisingly, this is not the quickest of the three, and that really did surprise me, even with me driving all three, me tuning all three, and of course on the same circuit, it was not the quickest. Even though it felt the quickest, I would say the Nissan is easily the sharpest of the three. It's the most rabid, but in a good way. It's not a car that's necessarily too frenzied, especially when you're using the tune setup that I am, which is incidentally the exact same tune that I put on YouTube a couple of days ago. So as a point of reference, you guys can feel exactly what the one that I'm driving in the video is like, so you know the kind of potential that it's got. Now interestingly, the roles have kind of reversed for the Nissan. In the case of the Sauber in particular, with the Jag maybe a little bit behind, and that is in terms of top end speed, because on most other tracks that doesn't matter as much, but here at home, on their home turf at Lesart, especially the older circuit without the chicanes, that kind of top end speed does matter a lot. And the Nissan has a pretty big advantage. With my tuning at least, I've got the Nissan up around 252, the Jaguar at about 247, 248, and the Mercedes, surprisingly to me at least, at 240. Now, although the Nissan was not the quickest of the three in terms of this occasion's lap, I would still stand by what I said about it being the strongest all round, because it's got the entire package. It looks the part, sounds the part, has great handling, it's not ridiculously beginner friendly or aggressive, it's very well placed between the two. It's surprisingly forgiving to drive, but also extremely quick through corners. Top end speed is great, acceleration is fantastic. It's the one to go for as far as I'm concerned if you're only going to buy one of the three. And as far as downsides, well, I don't think it really has any significant ones. We've got the stuff about the cockpit cam being a little bit too dark and the driver's position being a little bit too low, but you can change those things, so it's not really a knock against the performance of the car. So what then next up about the oldest of the three, the Jaguar? Well, the Jaguar is the only car of the three which I would say has some definite, what you could say, weaker points in its armour. Not necessarily disadvantages, but areas in which you can very quickly notice the difference between the Jag and the Mercedes and the Nissan. Because the Jag is not just older, because at the end of the day, it's only older than the Mercedes by 1 year, 1988 compared to 1989, but the difference in how they perform is much more different than that. Because the Mercedes is kind of like the Toyota Minolta, wherein it feels very advanced for its time, like the dawn of a new age kind of 1989, whereas this Jag feels more like 1985 kind of spec that just happened to be used in 1988, if you know what I mean. It feels like an older school machine, and it looks like it as well. It's got the covered rear wheels, a more old school appearance, and you can feel that. It is that little bit more sluggish at lower speeds for both acceleration and handling, which means that although it's great around Lesart, on say city circuits for instance with 90-degree turns, you can notice the difference. The pace feels a little bit slower, but in a similar way actually to the Mercedes, I would say, the Jaguar is still deceptively quick, because although it was the slowest of the three, not by much, this is still a sub 3-minute lap. That's still impressive for a car of its age, and given that it doesn't necessarily have the strongest of spec out of the three cars. Disadvantages with the Jag are fairly obvious. I would say that this is more so for a super fan of Group C who doesn't necessarily just want the best in class, but wants something that's got a bit more flair to it, something with that bigger V12 engine, the more old school appearance with the covered wheels. It's definitely got a lot of appeal, especially with the livery on it that I love, as I said in the review yesterday. But what then last, but definitely not least on this occasion, about the Mercedes? Well, I have to say that I definitely gave short shrift, really, to the Sauber C9 in this matchup, because I thought it would be somewhere between the Nissan and the Jaguar. I definitely didn't think that it was going to be the quickest of the three. But it is. With my tuning, of course with me driving, it actually turned out to be the fastest of the three cars in terms of lap, and I didn't feel as if it was going to be. For all the way around the track, it felt slower than the other two. The handling is heavier, the acceleration feels more sluggish, not quite to the level of the Jaguar, but definitely compared to the Nissan, it's not as rabid, and look at the top speed, it's so much less. It's the lowest of the three at 240, that's about 7 miles per hour slower than the Jaguar, and a full 12 miles per hour slower than the Nissan. And yet somehow it's still managed to be the quickest of the three, which is a testament to just how deceptively quick the pace of this C9 is through the corners, not just on the straight. So overall, it shocked me that this turned out to be the quickest of the three. So I would say that the profile, really, of the Sauber, at least in this game, and this is the first time that this has been the case, is it's a deceptive car. It's something of a sleeper, ironically enough, because in previous Gran Turismo games, the Sauber has never been a car that people didn't take seriously. They always do, because it's so good. It's one of the most powerful, one of the fastest, one of the most dominant. But on GT Sport, it doesn't feel like that anymore. The top speed is nowhere near as high, the power is nowhere near as high, and yet it still proves just how dominant it can be. At least on this occasion, being the fastest of the three is a big deal, given how competitive the other two are, but especially that Nissan. Now, it didn't win by a huge amount, it's around 0.1 of a second, but still being that much quicker at all, over a car that it's 12 miles per hour slower than, is a huge deal. So that gives you an interesting idea in terms of lap, what these cars are capable of. What then on paper? Well, when you compare the on-paper specs of the cars, which incidentally we're going to do in their fully upgraded form, I know some people don't like that, but the reason why we do it is quite simple. It just shows those who haven't bought all three the kind of potential that they have. Plus you have to bear in mind that these videos are about fun anyway, that's the whole top trumps factor, which is why of course stuff like the biggest engine gets a point, where the reality is that doesn't really apply in the real world. Of course the Mazda 787B goes to show that, but let's see how the points actually fall. First of all, we have, of course, the price. They're all the same. So as I've said before, you could choose to give none of them a point, but for the sake of fun, let's give them all a point for that. Likewise with category, this is not the kind of occasion where with a road car you can have a wider range. No, they're all Group 1, that's where they stay, at least for the moment. So again, let's give them all a point for that. As far as engine capacity though, this is where it starts to change, because as I just said with the top trumps rules, biggest is not always best. In fact, it's often not in the racing world, but for the sake of numbers, we will be given the Jag a point because it's got that huge 7-litre engine. In fact, it's one of the biggest engines of any prototype, and it wouldn't really be rivaled, at least as far as I can remember, until Panos brought out their, what was it now, 6.2 litre, I think, V8 LMP car. But apart from that, there aren't many others with that kind of size, and of course that was a long time later. As far as power, the Mercedes gets the point for that one, 945 horsepower, which is only 4 more than the Jaguar, and 7 horsepower more than the Nissan, which is kind of ironic that the Nissan is the quickest of the three for top speed, but has the least power. Very interesting there. As far as torque as well, the point goes to the Mercedes by quite a fair amount actually, especially over the Nissan. Again, 767 foot-pounds, 689 for the Nissan, so it's way behind, and the Jaguar once again falling in between the two with a very respectable 723, and I would actually say that the Jaguar is the most impressive, because even though it isn't the highest, it's naturally aspirated. Both of the other two cars are turbocharged, so for it to be putting out that kind of torque from that naturally aspirated, albeit big capacity V12, I think that's pretty cool. It's certainly a great engine, and probably my favourite engine of the three. As far as weight, it's very close between all three cars, but when you drop them down fully, it does go to the Nissan. It weighs 792 kilos, which is 2 kilos less than the Mercedes, 3 kilos less than the Jaguar. So that's pretty much the closest that the three of them will come in terms of differences. And of course the horsepower per tonne as well is going to go to the Mercedes, because it does have that little bit more power, allowing it to negate the increased weight and still have 1190 horsepower per tonne, which is 6 more. Just 6 horsepower more than the Nissan, and again, funnily enough, 6 horsepower more than the Jaguar. Kind of ironic that the Jag and the Nissan both have the same horsepower per tonne, given that they really do not feel the same at all. And in terms of lap time, of course, as you saw from the video earlier on, the slowest of the three, slow of course being relative, was a 259.776 with the Jaguar. Very respectable lap. Then coming in second, surprisingly to me, was the Nissan with a 256.632, but then the fastest of the three, the Sauber C9 with a 256.543. Very respectable laps for all three cars, getting under 3 minutes, especially when you bear in mind they've got nowhere near the power and the top speed that they had on Gran Turismo 6. So overall, the winner on this occasion is rarely also the car that was actually the quickest. That does not happen as often as you'd expect in these matches, but it is the Sauber. The Sauber gets 5 points overall to the 3 points of both the Jaguar and the Nissan. So if you discount the ways in which they're all the same, which is of course category and price, the individual advantages that they have are the Jaguar has the biggest engine, the Mercedes has power, torque, and horsepower per tonne, which is a really good amount of advantages, and the Nissan interestingly has the weight advantage to its name. So very interesting to see how it pans out. I would however still say that the Nissan is the best overall, even though the Mercedes did edge it out, because as well as just being the quickest, the Mercedes was just that, but the Nissan is more fun, I would say, certainly feels faster, and has more of a wide range of track potentials to go up on, not just Lassat. So overall, all three cars are fantastic. All three of them I absolutely love in different ways, and I love the fact that they chose cars that are genuinely so different, despite being in the same category. Not from the exact same year, of course, but close enough. So overall, it's a great rivalry, and it's one which I hope that they add to in the future with other cars from the Group C era as well, both older perhaps and newer. But that's it overall for this particular Rivals match. As I said, of course, you can already check out a tune for the Nissan that I've done, which is the one that I'm using in this video, and I'm going to be putting up the tunes that I used for both the Mercedes and the Jaguar tomorrow, as well as I've already done reviews for all three of the cars individually, where we go much more in depth about each of them. But that's it for this Rivals match overall. Of course, I'll see you guys next time, and for now, as always, thanks for watching.